Everything was supposed to be flawless at the grand country estate, where an atmosphere of pure luxury prevailed, with crisp white linens, hundreds of fresh roses imported from the Netherlands, crystal glassware sparkling in the afternoon sun, and a soft, elegant string quartet filling the air with classical masterpieces. Because it was the undisputed wedding of the year, as Emily, David's only daughter, and the absolute light of his existence, was finally getting married, and for David, this day was supposed to be the crown jewel of his entire life, since he had raised Emily entirely on his own through years of blood, sweat, and unrelenting sacrifice. To truly understand the weight of this moment, one had to look back 18 years to the cold, unforgiving winter when David's world had violently fractured into a million jagged pieces, because back then, he was just a young man full of naive dreams, working a modest job as an assistant accountant at a regional firm, deeply in love with a woman named Sarah, who had suddenly, without a single word of warning or a goodbye note, vanished into thin air on a freezing Tuesday morning, leaving behind nothing but a tiny, shivering bundle wrapped in a pink blanket on his kitchen table. A baby girl who was barely 2 years old, looking up at him with big, innocent eyes that knew nothing of the brutal betrayal that had just occurred. David remembered how his heart had stopped beating for a second that morning, how the silence of the empty apartment felt like a physical blow to his chest, and how every single relative and friend had whispered behind his back that he should give the child up to the state, that a single man in his early 20s with a low-paying job could never raise a child alone. But looking down at that small, helpless face, something primal and absolute shifted deep inside his soul, and he whispered a vow to the empty room that he would live and die for this little girl, naming her Emily because it meant industrious and striving, traits he knew he would need in abundance. The financial reality of single parenthood hit him like a freight train within the very first week, as his modest accounting salary vanished entirely beneath the crushing weight of formula, diapers, pediatricians, and skyrocketing rent, forcing David to make the hardest decision of his life, to take on a second job, loading heavy freight at a local warehouse from midnight until 6 in the morning, which meant he barely slept more than 3 hours a night for 5 consecutive years, dragging his exhausted, aching body from the corporate desk job, where he crunched numbers under fluorescent lights, straight to the freezing, dusty loading docks, where he hoisted heavy wooden crates until his palms bled and his back felt like it was breaking in half. There were nights when he sat in the dark kitchen at 3 in the morning, staring at a stack of unpaid electricity bills with tears freezing in his eyes, wondering if he would collapse before morning. But then he would hear a soft whimpering from the crib in the next room, and he would rush in to find little Emily burning up with a fever, holding her tiny hot hand for hours while rocking back and forth, whispering prayers to a God he wasn't even sure he believed in, willing her fever to break and promising himself that he would move mountains just to keep her safe. As Emily grew into a curious, bright toddler, David's life became a synchronized military operation of survival and unconditional love, where he traded his social life, his career ambitions, and his own youth for plastic blocks, coloring books, and bedtime stories told by the faint glow of a cheap nightlight, remembering the exact moment when she had taken her very first unassisted steps across their threadbare living room rug, waddling right into his outstretched arms, with a squeal of pure joy that had completely erased every single ounce of exhaustion from his bones, making him realize that she wasn't just a responsibility handed to him by a runaway mother, but the absolute anchor of his entire universe. When Emily started kindergarten, David managed to claw his way up to a senior financial analyst position through sheer, brutal perseverance, working late nights under his desk lamp after she went to sleep, studying advanced corporate tax law and financial forecasting, while his eyes burned from fatigue, all so he could eventually afford a small, decent house in a safe neighborhood with a good school district, because he refused to let her grow up in the rough, crime-ridden apartment complex where they had spent her earliest years, enduring years of cheap instant noodles, patched-up shoes, and second-hand clothes, so that every extra penny could go into a college fund. He secretly started the day she turned 6. He remembered the endless weekends spent volunteering at her elementary school bake sales, sitting in tiny plastic chairs during parent-teacher conferences, while the teachers praised her sharp mind and artistic talent, filling his heart with such an overwhelming wave of pride that he would often have to step outside into the hallway just to wipe away a stray tear of pure gratitude, knowing that every blister on his hands from the warehouse years and every gray hair on his head was worth it because she was growing up into a kind, brilliant, and deeply compassionate human being who loved her father just as fiercely as he loved her. As the years marched relentlessly forward, their bond only grew deeper through high school science fairs, heart-to-heart talks about teenage heartbreaks over burnt Saturday morning pancakes, and the bittersweet day he drove her to the university campus 3 hours away, sitting in his car afterward for an hour in the empty parking lot, just sobbing uncontrollably because the house felt impossibly quiet, without her laughter echoing down the hallway. Yet here they were today, standing at the grand country estate, where an atmosphere of pure luxury prevailed, with crisp white linens, hundreds of fresh roses imported from the Netherlands, crystal glassware sparkling in the afternoon sun, and a soft, elegant string quartet filling the air with classical masterpieces, because it was the undisputed wedding of the year, as Emily, his sweet little girl, was finally getting married to a promising young architect she had met during her junior year. For David, this day was supposed to be the crown jewel of his entire life. Standing right there in the backyard of the restaurant, dressed in an expensive tailored dark blue suit, holding a thick paper envelope safely tucked inside his inner jacket pocket as his ultimate wedding gift to his daughter, a certified deed and key to a fully paid-off apartment in the city, and the key to her secure, prosperous future, knowing exactly 5 minutes remained until the grand beginning of the ceremony, while the esteemed guests had already taken their seats in the luxurious, flower-adorned hall. But for some reason, instead of pure joy or fatherly pride, a strange, suffocating wave of cold anxiety gripped David's chest, and his heart hammered wildly against his ribs as if he were walking straight into a dangerous trap, driven by an overwhelming, dark premonition that something was horribly and irrevocably wrong. So he bypassed the main entrance and hurried toward the secluded service wing at the back of the building, noticing immediately with a jolt of panic that the heavy service doors of the restaurant were left slightly ajar, letting out a cool draft and a heavy, unmistakable trail of expensive perfume. And the exact moment that familiar scent hit his senses, David froze dead in his tracks, because it was a fragrance he hadn't smelled in 5 long, agonizing years, the exact signature perfume of Elena, the woman who had abandoned them both and sworn to utterly destroy him the very day she disappeared without a trace, causing a dark shadow to emerge step by step from the dim hallway into the pale light, revealing Elena standing there with a terrifying, calm, and mocking smile, holding an identical envelope sealed tightly with a heavy crimson wax stamp, and blocking his path as if she had been patiently waiting for this exact second his entire life. While the heavy silence between them felt so dense and suffocating, you could easily cut it with a knife, and David felt his breath catch sharply in his throat as he tried to find the right words to push her away before she could utter a single syllable of destruction. But Elena was already speaking in that slow, venomous tone that used to haunt his worst nightmares.
Looking for someone, David? Or did you really think you could just bury the past and pretend it never existed? Did you really think you could play the proud, perfect, unsuspecting father while hiding the biggest, dirtiest lie of your entire existence?
What are you doing here, Elena? You have no business at this wedding. Get out of my sight before I call security and have you thrown out like trash in front of all these respectable guests.
No business? David, you still don't get it, do you? You walked in here ready to celebrate fake happiness, ready to beam with pride over a daughter that isn't even yours. Go ahead. Open your envelope and see what your precious, pathetic life is really worth.
With a sharp, dismissive, and cruel flick of her wrist, she tossed a set of documents straight onto David's chest, scattering the heavy papers across the cold concrete floor. But one sheet, a legal archive document combined with an official medical genetic test report, reflexively caught in David's grip, while the ground beneath his feet completely dissolved into nothingness, and the surrounding trees and stone walls began to spin wildly, making something snap inside his chest with a dull, sickening crack as all those 18 years of deep, cherished memories flashed before his eyes in a blinding rush. The cold winter nights, the warehouse shifts, the hospital visits, the sleepless textbook hours, and every single "I love you, Dad" that he had held onto as the absolute, unquestionable truth of his existence, driving his mind to scream in absolute agonizing denial that it was just a cruel, fabricated lie and another manipulative trick designed to tear his world apart until Elena leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a venomous, ice-cold whisper that pierced right through the loud ringing in his ears, making him realize with sudden horror that she wasn't just here to ruin his special day, but to systematically destroy every single truth he had ever lived for, because she casually dropped a chilling hint about a second hidden envelope, revealing that someone else inside the grand ballroom, someone painfully close to the family, had helped orchestrate this entire elaborate nightmare from the shadows, leaving David completely paralyzed as he stared down at the terrifying papers in his trembling hands, while from deep inside the hall, the booming and joyful voice of the wedding MC echoed through the open doors, announcing for everyone to please welcome the bride, causing the upbeat music to surge as the main double doors were mere feet away, meaning Emily would step out in her glowing white gown in a matter of seconds, radiant and smiling, expecting her loving father to walk her down the aisle. But David stood frozen right at the edge of the emotional abyss, knowing he had to make a split-second decision that would alter reality forever, while Elena watched him suffer with a look of pure, unadulterated triumph, stepping even closer to pour more poison into his bleeding ears.
Read the results, David. Did you really think Emily was your flesh and blood? You poured your entire youth, your entire existence, into raising a child who shares zero DNA with you. Her mother knew the truth from day one. And the worst part? Someone inside that very room helped me set this up today. Everyone knew. Everyone except you.
You're lying. This is insane. It's impossible. Who? Who helped you? Tell me right now, or so help me God I will.
Go ahead, walk into that hall, David. Let your precious daughter take your arm while everyone secretly laughs behind your back. Or open the file and let the truth burn it all to the ground right now before it's too late.
David tightly clenched the legal documents in his hand until the paper crunched loudly and his ears rang with a deafening, painful sound as he slowly turned his heavy head back toward the massive white doors of the grand hall, where the music suddenly changed its tempo and the solemn, traditional melody of the wedding march began to play, causing the heavy doors to slowly swing open and reveal Emily standing right in the doorway wearing an incredible, luxurious gown that sparkled brilliantly in the sunlight beneath a light, delicate veil, with a happy, radiant smile on her face, while she searched the crowded room with eager eyes for only one person, her dad, the one who held her hand through every single difficult moment of her life and whom she considered her only true, unwavering pillar of strength. And the exact moment Emily saw David standing near the side, her face lit up even brighter as she took an eager step forward and reached out her hand, ready to take his arm for her final walk toward the groom, while David took a mechanical step forward as the surrounding guests held their breath in anticipation of the deeply touching moment of parental blessing. Yet, Elena stood motionless in the shadows of the corridor, with her arms crossed over her chest, watching this heartbreaking spectacle with a cold, wicked smile, because she knew with absolute certainty that no matter what David chose to do next, his old life was already dead and buried. So David forced his feet to move up to the threshold of the hall as Emily softly whispered to ask why he looked so pale and why he wasn't coming closer, since everyone was staring right at them, after which she trustingly placed her small, warm hand directly into his palm, instantly noticing that his fingers were ice cold and trembling violently, while a fierce apocalyptic war raged deep inside his soul between his daughter's innocent tears and Elena's bitter, life-shattering lie. Yet David looked deep into his daughter's trusting eyes, took one massive shuddering breath, slowly raised his other hand, holding those exact incriminating documents, and instead of staying silent or causing a loud, scandalous public scene, he gently took Emily by both hands, looking straight into her eyes with immense, unbearable pain combined with a boundless, unconditional parental warmth, choosing in that exact second to protect her fragile heart above everything else in the universe. Emily, no matter what is written on these cold papers, no matter whose blood actually runs through your veins, you were, you are, and you will always be my only true daughter. Now, let's walk down the aisle together. The entire massive hall fell completely, deafeningly silent as Emily looked at him in total shock and confusion, before glancing down briefly at the papers clutched in his hand, while tears of incredible, Overwhelming love and deep gratitude welled up in her bright eyes, and without a single second of hesitation, she tightly embraced David right in front of all the stunned guests, completely shattering all of Elena's carefully calculated plans into a million useless pieces, because true family is never built on cold, sterile DNA test results, but purely on the boundless devotion of the heart.